Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at this AV123 ERT tweeter. It's an add-on tweeter. It's going to be pretty interesting. Now, before we get started, I want to say a few things. I am in the listening room and it's getting closer. The carpet is in. We've played with the acoustics in here. Things are sounding really good in here. Oh my goodness. The sound is great in here. I've still got to get all the wood trim up, the baseboard, the crown molding, and the strips of wood that goes down the walls to hide the seams, the finish around the window and the door. Still got all the woodworking to do to make it really look nice. And then a lot of this stuff you see behind me back there is all going to be gone. This is stuff we're just experimenting with. Some of that foam from our anechoic chamber, the big tube traps. That stuff's going to get out of here. If I use the tube traps, they're going to be in the back of the room, and I'll rewrap them in a new fabric that matches the rest of the room furnishings. I got diaphragmatic absorbers I'm putting in the front corners up here that'll match the room and should give it a really nice look when I'm finished. So getting close. I've even got some of those nice Eins type seating chairs coming that are really nice. I don't know if I said that right, but lots of cool stuff coming. Also, I'm wearing a Team USA World Cup shirt today, and I want to say that no matter what, I'm always pulling for Team USA. I'm always watching every game. I hope they win it all. I hope they make it to the final and win the World Cup. Can they? I don't know. It would be a first, that's for sure. And they've got some really tough competition. Who knows who's going to win at this point, but I'm definitely pulling for Team USA. And I want to make that clear because last week, or in the last video, I wore a Messi jersey. And I want to say that regardless of my allegiance and my patriotism to my country, I still will always honor the great players, regardless of where they've come from, whether they're from one country or another, what race they are, I don't care. For the love of the game, I'll always appreciate those great players. And still, if you want to send me one of those jerseys from one of those great players and have me wear your country's jersey in a video, I will be glad to do it. Now, let's dig into this little super tweeter thing. This is a topic that I've seen out there a bunch and there's companies that make different types of these where you can take this tweeter, and the idea is that you set this up on top of your speaker and it's going to add this air and space and it's going to open up the top end, and it's going to do all these special things. Well, no, that's not really what happens. And in these applications, it's usually much more destructive than anything it helps. Now, in this case, this little AV123 model has a little planar magnetic tweeter, which is a great choice for this application because it does play way up there. Typically, these will play up to 40,000 hertz. Now, the thing about doing this is you want to make sure that whatever parts you put in the signal path are going to maintain the purity of the signal up there in that top end where the spatial cues exist. You don't want to put any type of capacitor or anything in there that's going to cause smearing and loss of resolution that will eat up all the things you're trying to create by adding that sense of air and space around things. These little caps that were in there, at least they were poly caps and a little air cord, so it's fair, but it wasn't great. And so this is eating up a little bit of that resolution. The other thing too, it's got a little volume pot on the back of it, and it had two inputs on the back that you could use, one with each of these different caps. So you could make it play down a little lower and a little stronger depending on which of the inputs you put. And it had a group of resistors in there on that volume pot. So it wasn't a really bad pot, but it wasn't great. So it's definitely sucking things up a little bit. What was really funny was that there was insulation in the box, like a little polyfill was stuffed in there. I got a real kick out of that. It's a sealed back tweeter. There's no sense in putting any stuffing in the box. That was hilarious. So I set up a little speaker. I grabbed a X Bravo off the shelf because it was handy, and I wanted to set this up the way most people do and take some measurements so I can show what's going on and how the destructive behavior affects the response in what's, I'm calling it destructive behavior. It's comb filtering is what's going on. Now let's look at the first measurement that shows the measurement of this little Bravo, which is a really well measuring speaker. And then down below it there, you can see several dB down, you can see two other measurements there. That's the output, depending on which cap you select. It's way down in output, and it is limited just to the top end, which in a way is good for something you're going to set on top of a speaker like this, because with it being that low in output, it isn't near as destructive as it could be as if it were at the same level. If it were at the same level, it would actually cause a 15 dB hole in the response, and then that hole's going to move around depending on the time arrival between these two sources, because you have two sources playing the same signal, same information. So if one arrives in time just slightly behind the other, it can cause cancellation. But in this case, it's really down in output, so it's not super destructive, but it's destructive. So I'm going to go through these and we're going to look at what it did. The first measurement here we're looking at is the blue curve you see is the measurement of the little X Bravo, and the purple line is with the addition of the tweeter. And as you can see, it caused a peak in one area, it caused a dip in another, and then a peak at the very top end. So it did this to the response. Not what you want out of adding something like that. In some case there, it's about 3 dB down from what it was without it even there at all. And that was actually a pretty good spot. I was still on axis with this tweeter, so adding that wasn't super destructive in that location, but it was not good. The other thing, not only is there a variable of height that changes that cancellation, but whether or not you move this thing back a little bit or not. So I had it even with the front of the speaker. Let's look what happens when I move it back from where it is now. I moved it back a half of an inch. Notice how much difference it made in the top end. Where that dip was is now a peak, and where those peaks were, they're now a dip. So the comb filtering is certainly taking place there. Now when I moved it back 1 inch, it was actually not a whole lot worse than it was before. It shifted things back a little bit, but it's still destructive. The next thing I did was I brought it back out to the front. I'm on tweeter axis, and the blue line you're going to see in this measurement is on that axis. And then each additional measurement at 1 meter is 4 inches up. So you can see from red to orange to yellow to green, the vertical off axis, and how that response changes quite a bit as you move up. I think the yellow line was probably one of the worst. And then let's look at the vertical off axis without the blue line being there, which was just the speaker alone. You can see it, so it makes it a little easier to see what's happening as you move up. And keep in mind too, this one isn't near as bad as a lot of these things are, because the level is so far down. In this case, the level was about 7 to 8 dB down in output versus this speaker. If it were louder, those cancellations and the peaks would be much greater. There'd be much higher peak where they're in phase and a much lower dip when they're out of phase. So it could be worse. Let's look at this measurement. This was the worst. I want to say that was close to 12 inches up. It was close to the measurements you saw that were yellow in that vertical off axis before. So I just deleted the rest of them out, turned this one red. And as you can see, the addition of this tweeter at that location made things a whole lot worse than if it were even there to begin with. So it's never a good idea to add one of these to a speaker and face it in the same direction as your tweeter. You don't want two sources playing the same thing. Also, I wanted to take a look at the impedance. The impedance levels of this by itself were fairly high. So when we took the Bravo itself and then we added this to it, we can see how it dropped the impedance at the top end there a little bit. And that's okay. Most speakers, especially anything that's a dome tweeter, there's some inductive reactance there of the voice coil, where the coil itself and the voice coil of the tweeter adds inductance, so resistance tends to go up, or impedance goes up as you go up in frequency. So paralleling something like this onto it typically isn't that bad of a deal. Now, let's take a look at what I was able to do with this thing and how to properly implement one of these tweeters. First of all, the thing you want to do to really open up the sound stage and create this big airy sound is you want to set this on the speaker facing the other direction. Typically just setting it at the back of the speaker so that it minimizes any reflection off of the surface. You don't want to set it at the front because then you're dealing with this surface reflection. So just set it at the back of the speaker and face it to the front wall. Now what that's going to do is it's going to make the speaker sound more like an open baffle speaker. It's creating some of that air and space, and it's putting it within the room, but what you hear is a delay, and your ear perceives it as ambience within the room, and it makes the room sound bigger and more open. It doesn't have any destructive interference with the on-axis response. The on-axis response remains unchanged, and what it's doing in the room remains unchanged. You're just adding those spatial cues to the room, and it really can add a lot to the room. It's really surprising what it can do. We're doing it with the alleys that you see right behind me, which sound really good in here. The Maddie model also has a rear firing driver, and the Encore Extreme, which is a really high level performing Encore model that has a harp device inside, the treated wire, and the rear firing tweeter. And we worked with that model a lot to get the rear firing tweeter to play up as far as we can, like let it play on up there, or let it play down there, I should say. Let it play down in range, but not too far as to have any effect of the front output. What we want to do is we want to keep it in a range where it's playing from the tweeter forward, and we're not letting it play low enough in frequency that those ranges become omnidirectional and start wrapping around. We want it to only play in one direction. So the rear tweeter on the Encore Extreme, just like the drivers on the Maddie and Alley, they're only playing just towards that front wall only, and they're not playing low enough to wrap around and cause destructive interference. So what I did with this tweeter was I kind of emulated the response that we're getting on the tweeter that's on the back of the Encore Extreme. So I let it play down a little bit lower, but not too low. And I brought the levels up so that the levels match the output level of the front speaker. And that's kind of where we fell with the Encore Extreme. And it really, really adds a sense of space and openness and just increases the whole size of the soundstage. It's amazing what those spatial cues can do when they're heard as a late arrival reflection. And even in a treated room, and even more so in a treated room, it really tends to open things up and add that airiness that the room may be absorbing in those regions. So let's look at it. Let's look at the new on-axis response. You can see nice smooth roll off. It did take a handful of parts to correct the response of this thing. It had a big TP'd response at 10K, and then it was falling off below that. So I had to put a notch on there, notch filter, to bring that down and flatten it out so that it was more linear and would create a more balanced response of what it's doing in the room. Looking at the impedance, I still was able to keep the impedance fairly high because we know we're going to be paralleling it on to something. In fact, let's look at the impedance of the little X Bravo, and then that's the red line, and then there's the impedance of just the tweeter by itself. I think that one was green, and then we can see the blue line, which is just the impedance of them summed together. Notice it reduced it a little bit in one spot, brought it down to just a little above 4 ohms. That's okay. It's up there to high frequency range, so that's not a problem. In fact, let's look at just the impedance of the X Bravo with that tweeter added to it. And as you can see, it looks great. It dropped it a little bit there at the top end, went to 4.9 ohms, so no issue at all. You can add this to almost any speaker. I'm going to try and get with Ron and see if we can get another one of these and put the new crossover on it and add it to maybe an Encore and see if we can do some sound clips so you can kind of hear what is it really doing. And maybe then we can look at or listen to sound clips of just the Encore versus the Encore Extreme, and let you hear what that rear radiating tweeter is doing and what that's adding to it. We've done a little experiment with recording some of that stuff before, and we've recorded some sound clips using the Alleys, and worked out really well. In fact, it's amazing how good those sound. If you haven't heard those, go to our page for the Alleys and Maddies and scroll down to the sound clips. Those are actually output from the speaker recorded in the room. That is an in-room recording of those songs played through those speakers. It sounds amazing. So done correctly, adding a rear firing tweeter will work really, really well. So everybody out there that's got one of these things, and there's a handful of these things out there, or any other tweeter designed to set up on your speaker like that, don't set it facing forward. It's just going to cause comb filtering. But if you'll turn it around the other way, you're going to hear some real benefit from it. And then if you use some really high quality parts and balance the signal so that it's balanced with the speaker up front, you're going to be amazed at what it can do. It is certainly a great addition to a speaker if done correctly. So keep that stuff in mind. Don't face it forward. Another thing too, you can also face them up. When you face it up, though, it tends to sound better if you can time align it with the one at front, which makes it a little difficult. But facing it to the front of the room like that, so it's rear firing, yeah, it works great every time. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a little something maybe about adding super tweeters. So that's it for this one, and we'll see you guys in the next video.